Hello, and welcome to the live stream. Sorry I didn't stream last week. Got a little bit busy. But we're back. Gonna tie some stuff today. I think... Ooh, hang on, let me just try to focus a little bit more on the fly. I think the plan is, for today, is to tie a few more... see if I can get my light just right. I'm going to tie a few more flies. These are going to be fishing quality Mary Orvis Marbury style flies. And like I mentioned in the last stream, I'm going to be giving these away when I reach 500 followers on Instagram. If you want to follow me on Instagram, my Instagram is at justwondering.brad, BRAD. And go follow me there when I hit 500. I think I'm at like 415 at the time right now during the stream. 415, 414. So, a little bit of ways to go, but getting there. I'll give it away. And I'm not going to do like a random name, or like a random drawing. I think I'm going to run a contest. So if you want to be part of that, if you want to get notifications for that, go follow me on Instagram. Most of the social media I do is on Instagram. I also have a Facebook page, which you could go to, but Instagram's where I post most of my pictures, a few stories every now and then. But yeah. All right, so let's get into it. What threads do I have? Okay. Let's get my bobbin set up. All right, so we're going to tie another one of my favorite lake flies called the Alexandria or Alexandra. Scissors. And fairly famous. It's another one of those flies that appears in all sorts of shapes and sizes. I need a new vise. This is an ancient vise. This is this. I've only ever owned two vices, two fly tying vices, and this one is kind of ancient. As I recollect, this is not a Regal vise, but I believe it was marketed under the Regal brand for a while. That's what I recall. Again, like I said, I've had this vise now for about 25 years, and it's the only vise I've ever seriously tied out of. I had a one of those vices that you get out of kit where the jaws are made out of pot metal, and that did not last very long. So I got this for, I think, Christmas one year. And it's literally been my vice now for however many years. I am looking at new vice, hopefully, but vices are getting more and more expensive. So, hey, if you want to help me buy a new vise, go buy some flies off my Etsy shop. That is actually a financial goal that I have with proceeds from my Etsy shop, is to buy a new vise. Maybe even get a real regal vise. But hey, the other thing about this vise that is a little bit funny, and if you've ever seen me tie at a show, either I usually do the Lancaster, Pennsylvania show when I was living up there, or sometimes the New Jersey shows. A lot of times you'll see me tying in hand, so tying without a vise. And the reason for that is the clamp on this vise, the tabletop clamp, it wasn't thick enough, or didn't have enough clearance to get around the tables that the fly fishing show was using for the fly tires. And so first year I just showed up and started tying in hand, and that's how that started. But and that just kind of became like my thing. I know there are now, at the time that I started doing the shows and tying in hand and demonstrating fly tying techniques that way, there weren't really a whole lot of people doing it. And now I think it was just like Jens Pilgaard from Europe, who was tying in hand at shows on a regular basis. And then I started doing it, and now, and it's not that I was like leading the edge of a movement or anything. I think it was just a lot of people kind of just got on board at all about the same time. I know there's a double handful these days, I think, that do it on a regular basis at the various shows. Yeah, I'm certainly not. What am I doing? I'm talking too much. All right. See, you all get me talking. So anyway, yeah. So I started tying in hand, just as like a necessity for tying at these shows, because again, I didn't, and I still don't have a pedestal for this vise. I probably ought to, given how many different shows I've tied at, but I don't. And kind of determined that I don't need one, because if I can't tie in my vise at a show, then I can just tie in hand. That's not a big deal for me. So not being able to tie in a vise at a show because I don't have a pedestal is not such a big deal. And the other thing about pedestals, it's a little bit like the people who tie really big deer hair bugs. When you're mounting a wing, once you've got the wings centered and perfectly on, you actually have to apply a fair amount of force to set the wing. And sometimes if the pedestal is not heavy enough, you can put enough force on the hook to actually pull the vise over. And so that's why I like a C-clamp in addition. But yeah, like I said, it's not a big deal if my C-clamp doesn't, or my vise clamp doesn't fit, because heck, I'll just tie in hand at a show. No big deal. Done it before. That's mostly what I do anyway. So yeah, so all that being said, I am in the market for a new vise, just because this vise is 25 years old and ready to move on to something a little bit nicer, a little bit I would like to have a certain amount of rotary function to any new vise I have, because this obviously this vise does not have any rotary function whatsoever. and I've been getting away with it. If you've seen me tie on stream, but it's not ideal, especially if I want to take a peek around the backside of the fly just to see how things are developing. Yeah, it's not ideal. All right, so the interesting thing about the Alexandria fly is that it doesn't have a tip; it just has a tag. And here's an example with a snelled hook, and this is a 2/0. I think this is a 4/0 hook, I believe. It's a vintage mustad hook, but this is what we're tying today, Alexandria, and yeah, classic fly. Just mostly you see these as wet flies. If you see them in the shops. Actually, speaking of the wet fly version, my very lovely in-laws love to go to Scotland on vacation. And I think they go probably every other year. And every time they go to Scotland, they go to the vintage or antique shops or the vintage fishing shops, and they buy me one of these very nice, I believe this is a Wheatley fly box, and with whatever flies are inside. And so this year they got me this one. And I think, is this the one? Yeah, so this one has a number of flies in it, but it does have a somewhat beat up and somewhat crudely tied, probably about a size 8 wet fly version, which is lovely. But yeah, this is an amazing box. Full of hand-tied flies. I don't know how vintage these flies are, but they are definitely all hand-tied. Some very interesting patterns just to see and look and see what's popular across the pond. And I've got this is the largest one I have. I also have two smaller ones. They're different sizes. The one's a little bit thicker than the other, but I think this one also, no. But yeah, it has these wonderful vintage flies. Some patterns that are definitely very different from what we fish here in the United States. Oh yeah, and so this one here also has a very nice Alexandria right here. So yeah, it's usually found in wet fly size. This is clearly, 4/0 is a big hook, probably more suited to, bass fishing or perhaps steelhead fishing. You could troll it for pike. A lot of these, so the thing about the Mary Orvis Marbury flies is a lot of them were actually meant for trolling and not casting, which is why many of them were tied in sizes that are pretty large for the time. Excuse me. If you think, the blacker salmon flies, with a few exception of, I think, like the spring flies were tied fairly large, but a lot of the flies are actually tied fairly small. Particularly when you consider, modern tyers like myself tend to tie them on, 3/0, 4/0 size hooks. Many of those blacker flies were tied on hook equivalent sizes of, size 1 or like 1/0 at the largest, and then smaller. So this kind of goes back to what I was talking about on the last stream. we modern tyers tend to over tie or tie these flies, too large. And I think the thing from my standpoint is just you got to make sure that you don't tie it too large for the hook. I see on like Instagram, a lot of people tie these really fantastically large wings, and they're beautiful. Don't get me wrong. That much surface area is great for having a complex wing. And really doing a lot with patterns and things. But if you over tie the hook, then it's just it doesn't look right. Okay, so I cut the slips for the tail, and it's just red goose shoulder, kind of the standard thing that I use. You could use red turkey, but this is not a particularly large slip of feather. Do want it to extend a fair ways, but but yeah, it's not particularly chunk, so to speak. Because I am tying this as a fishing fly and not as a display fly, I'm going to use this ultra wire for the rib, and I'm going to use Mylar for the body. Not something I say very often, but if I'm using like Lagarton, it's a French company, so I have no idea how to pronounce it. But if I'm using Lagarton or Lagarton enameled tinsel, that stuff's pretty expensive. So I tend to reserve that for flies which are going to be displayed. Yeah, and the enamel tinsel is great because it doesn't tend to oxidize or rust. Although silver and gold don't rust; they oxidize. It does add to the cost, and if I'm using like vintage tinsels, then that can even add to the cost even more. So, when you're tying fishing flies, you don't need to use the expensive stuff. Mylar works just fine. It looks fine. It's not a great loss if you lose a fly. Do I go down and back or just down? This is fairly thick Mylar. So I think I will go down and back just to build up a little bit of extra bulk. This is a 4/0 hook, and it should be a nice chunky body for this style of fly. Yeah, and this ultra thread that I'm using, or sorry, uni thread, not ultra, is pretty good at laying down flat. I think I tend to emphasize, excuse me. I tend to emphasize flat underbodies for like going under, shoot, lost my train of thought. Oh, flat underbodies for going under floss. But you can get away with a fair amount of, unevenness with floss because you can use the space of, you can fill certain amount of unevenness with floss. However, when it comes to tinsel, there is because tinsel is flat, it's metallic, and by comparison, it's relatively unmoving. If your underbody is, massively uneven, or even just a little bit uneven, it will cause the tinsel to lay in a funny way on the body. So having at least a consistent underbody, it may not have to be perfectly flat. Having a consistent underbody under a tinsel body is way more important than even under floss. So, yes. And don't forget, if you want to ask questions, feel free to type in the chat, or if you're watching this after this stream ends and the video is live, you can feel free to just type in a comment. I will get the notification. Yeah. I really intend for these live streams to be a little bit like you're sitting across the table from me at a show. And I don't want, this is not a presentation. I'm just tying and chatting like I would at a show. Like I said in the other, in I think the live stream from 2 weeks ago, if there's a specific skill that you would like me to demonstrate, please leave that in the comments as well. I will see that and I will do my best. I'm still working out how to film. The biggest challenge for me right now is I'm streaming off of a pretty basic laptop that doesn't have a lot of graphic power. So I'm a little bit limited in my ability to, edit videos. But I will do my best. I will hopefully be able to come out with some how-to videos. But for now, if there's something you would like me to do on live stream, no, that's not better. If there's something you would like me to do on live stream, let me know. Actually, I wonder if I've got a number of different desk lights just around my desk. That one doesn't reach too far. Okay. I do need the light because I am. It is a little bit dim in my room, or in the office that I am tying in, and I do need the light. So, but in any case, Mylar. Pulled off a long. I don't actually think I'll need this much Mylar. But and this is double-sided Mylar, so I do have to be careful about how I tie it in. Okay. I have to say, tying with a synthetic like Mylar, and the thread I use is usually synthetic, but like tying with Mylar, it just feels wrong. But yeah, like I said, I'm not gonna burn valuable, real metal tinsel on a fishing fly. Especially one, if this gets chucked for bass or pike, this could get beat up real bad. So although the fact that I have the Mylar does remind me that I could actually. So I was hoping to tie 2 flies today, and I didn't really have a plan for the second fly because pro streamer. But I am reminded that with this Mylar, I could, in fact, tie like a Black Prince or something similar. So, maybe that's what we'll do. We're kind of in this interesting thing with this Mylar that the original material. So a lot of times when we substitute synthetics, we often substitute them because the synthetic will be more durable. And in fact, I I don't fish with a lot of flies that have Mylar bodies, but I'm willing to go out on a limb and say that, in fact, a metal tinsel body will be more durable than the synthetic tinsel body. Just gonna go out on a limb and say that. But ooh. All right. Tie it off. All right. And it doesn't look too bad. Doesn't quite look as fake, I guess. I hate to say it that way, but it doesn't look quite as fake as I thought it might. That being said, what's next? Now, most of the time this is tied, the hackle is tied on as just as like a throat hackle. And that's normally how I tie it. So I think that's what I'm going to do anyway. So I am tying this. The pattern that I'm using is actually the wet fly or streamer version. I think the actual Mary Orvis Marbury version, if I remember correctly, is actually pictured as Peacock Sword Hurl, and not the red goose or red ibis tail. I'd have to look that up, but I'm pretty sure it's pictured differently. And I don't remember if it's a case of sometimes flies are described in the texts of the fly fishing books differently than they are pictured in their, in the pictures that accompany the text. Point out some Peacock Sword. Peacock Sword, $3 for like half a dozen feathers at Michael's. Pro tip: go to your local Michael's or was it AC Moore? Is that the other one? Anyway, go to your local craft shop, see what feathers they've got for cheap if you need something in bulk. Peacock Sword feathers. I was doing a project with Christmas trees made out of Peacock Sword, and let me tell you, when you need to buy bulk Peacock Sword craft store feathers, work great. Marabou, I guess I've seen. You can get like turkey wing feathers, but they're not always going to be matched. So, but yeah, at the very least, I found Peacock Sword feathers. It's $3 for half a dozen, whereas like at Orvis or Cabela's or any of the other big box stores, that same pack would go for twice as much. So definitely a good deal there. But we are on to the hackle. And excuse me. Trusty rooster neck. When I'm looking at the rooster neck, I'm actually looking at the feathers from this side because I'm looking for these large feathers right at the top, especially for a 4/0 size hook. This neck actually is from my first fly tying kit that I got almost 27 years ago. Wow, I feel old. I'm starting to talk about things that occurred in like almost 3 centuries ago, or 3 years ago. Anyway, my elderly state aside, yeah. So this is from my original fly tying kit. Didn't find a whole lot of patterns that use large black, the larger feathers from the back side of a black rooster cape. It came with 2 capes, as I recall, and the other one that came with the kit was a brown or furnace colored, like badger hackle. It had like the black, it was brown with like black stripe down the middle. I think that's called badger. So I still have that cape too. That one's a little bit more used, but I definitely almost immediately, well, not almost immediately, maybe a couple years later after that, graduated to a very nice grade 3, or I think at the time they're calling them, grade 3. That's what they call them. I think they call them copper grades now, but like a whiting neck. And I still have that as well. Geez. Yeah, so that's the danger of using real metal tinsels. I think I just cut my thread on the rib, annoyingly enough. So I'm going to wax my thread. At this juncture, I'm going to wax my thread because I will, like I just did, and I kind of glossed over, I pulled the hackle out. So actually, at this juncture, I'm going to switch to black. So as long as that happened, I'm going to switch to black thread. For the head, because this slide does have a black lacquered head, and I'm going to use a clear head cement. Let's see where to put my foot. I'm going to use a clear head cement because I have some of the for Christmas. I got some of the Loon UV UV setting Loon head cement, and been trying that out recently, and I think it works pretty well. It definitely once it's set using the UV light, it sets harder. In my opinion, it sets harder than the air set version, which is good. The problem that I had with the air set version of the Loon head cement was that it was still pretty soft for a while, even after it dried. And so flies that I tied using the air set Loon did not have the same kind of durability as I would have liked, even compared to even compared to my Kelson's. So I have this Kelson's formula head cement from Bill Bailey. Even compared to that, the Loon air dried black head cement doesn't dry quite as hard or as tough. But the UV stuff seems to be doing the trick. Seems to be hardening as I would like. So yeah, that seems to be working well. But again, I only use a Loon head cement on fishing flies. So if I'm going to be tying, classic fly, of course, I'm going to use a more traditional formula head cement. And the Bill Bailey's Kelson's is my choice because that stuff is awesome. All right, so give it a nice full throat hackle. Yeah, I can't quite see. I just got black on black here. There you go. And like usual, I want to build up a little bit of a thread base under the wing, because the wing is going to have to go up and over the hackle. And so oftentimes what happens is you wind the hackle and the stem of the hackle adds a lot of bulk right where you'd want to tie in the wing. And so in order to get the wing to lay properly against the body, you want to just build up the head just a little bit. Excuse me. I'm getting a little croaky here. Okay, so next, just gonna cut off with a bunch of Peacock Sword Hurl, and I'm gonna do this in maybe 3 or 4 bunches, simply because this is a massive wing. This is a big fly. This is a 4-aught fly, so gonna need a lot of this. Come on. There we go. So yeah, so that looks pretty good. That's 3 bunches. I'm just gonna trim up my butt ends here. Cool. Now, it's got 2 chunks of red goose or red ibis. I'm using red goose here. On either side, tied in is kind of like, I don't know, horns or just a splash of extra red color. This pattern kind of reminds me of the patterns that are meant to evoke or replicate like rainbow trout fry, maybe. So all right, so just to bind that all down, going to wax my thread as usual. Just want to even out the head a little bit. Got a little bit of unevenness there. All right, cool. It's one big ass Alexandria. Just whip finish it right up the wing. Boink. Yeah, so again, off stream, you guys don't need to watch head cement dry. I will add a nice coat of lacquer. But yeah, this is the Alexandria, tied as a ginormous wet fly. Not too shabby. All right, so like I said, this fly is going to be a part of the giveaway for when I reach 500 followers on Instagram. So this fly, so far, that fly, a very nice Royal Coachman. This one's definitely tied as a lake fly in the Ibis Marbury pattern, and then a grasshopper, also from Ibis Marbury. And I will probably throw in a few extras, flies that have either already been tied or tied off stream. But yeah, stay tuned. Keep an eye out for that announcement. As soon as I hit 500 followers. All right. So, with that, I think that is going to be the stream for today. Get that later. I think I'm going to call the stream for today. It has been a pleasure as always to show you and talk to you a little bit about my fly tying and my fly tying philosophy. And yeah, like I said, if there's something specific that you want to see me demonstrate, please put it in the comments. If you want to see more of my flies, follow me on Instagram, justwondering.brad. If you want to support the channel, or if you see a fly that you want, if you see me demonstrate a fly and you want to purchase it, you can check out my Etsy shop. It's Studio1213 on Etsy. And yeah, thanks for hanging out with me. I'm going to try and make these streams a weekly occurrence, probably Fridays, probably either 1 or 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And yeah, thanks for hanging out, and catch you next time.